the basic mechanics on riveting is quite simple. It's just going back to upsetting. You've got to have sufficient volume to build that head. Building a inappropriately sized head to a small head or an excessively large head that then collapses one way or the other is never quite right. So be aware that your ratio at best is 1.5 to 1 or 2 to 1. So in other words, your rivet head that you need once it goes through your material, so like that. Already got a head formed up there. If this here is in width 1/2 inch, you should have 3/4 to 1 inch in length. So pretty simple. You can make rivets without having a head on your material, so you kind of float it and upset both sides at the same time, but it does get a little bit problematic. So if you can get pre-annealed rivets, they're kind of handy, make your life a little bit easier. So with that in mind, make sure you have the right volume when you're bringing two pieces together. So on this particular one, I'm just going to use 2 pieces 1/4 inch, pop those two together. Make sure you got that head, and when you go to rivet it, make sure that these two surfaces are bed together. If you've got something a little bit more complicated like a lap joint or something like that, again, make sure that those two surfaces are well bonded together or well mated together. If they're a little bit off and you're putting the whole thing in the fire and heating it up, they will actually mate pretty well, especially with things like tongs. You can actually get those to bear together quite nicely. Because I'm running a pre-annealed rivet and I'm just putting these two together, I'm actually going to pre-cinch the rivet, so actually upset that top just a little bit in the cold state. That allows me to have the two pieces well connected before I even get started. I've got a little bit of swell there. It's brought the surfaces well together, and if I want to, create a angle on them or something like that whilst riveting, I can do and cinch those together. So I'm actually going to get a framing square to assist me with that. I'm going to sling the whole thing in the fire. That should be good. Back in a moment. Great. It's going to be one of those kinds of days. Show that. You could use the corner of your anvil as well if it's nice and square, or you've got a nice broad back end like this one, which is fairly square as well. Really, it's just to get that quick reference. You can always bump it slightly afterwards. So as that's heating up, I want to get just sufficient amount of material, so the head heated or the rivet heated all the way through into the head on the back side a little bit, so that when it does cinch and it actually starts cooling down, it will pull it tighter. If you just heat up the head, say you use an oxyacetylene rig, which is a perfectly acceptable way to do a rivet, but if you just heat the head and upset the head, you're not going to get that shrinkage in the body through here that's through the material. So if you actually heat that rivet all the way through, that's why it's nice to have a full heated rivet, you're going to get that 10% expansion on that material. So when it cools down, you're going to get that 10% shrinkage. A lot of failures that I've had in the past on rivets have been due to over-ambitious head sizes. So basically trying to upset too much material, and that thing will just start shifting one way or the other. So be aware that if you are in that 2 to 1 ratio, you are starting to get into a very unstable zone. Hello, your lordship. So that's good, heated all the way through. I'm going to flip it over quickly, give it a couple of taps from the back side just to cinch those surfaces. Come through on the top, drop it down, spread out that head. Whilst there's still a little bit of heat in it, I have the ability to align things a touch. I'd like to come in with my square. Then I can give it one last little cinch. And I'm going to cool it off in the 55-gallon drum. And if you've done that right, it should be pretty solid. I mean, there's going to be a touch of movement, yeah, there is, but it's pretty solid. And if I add extras on there, it's just going to get more and more sound. Nice thing that the farriers do, and I don't know whether this is just one thought process of farriers' tongs, but instead of doing, you know, typically a blacksmith just runs 2 round holes through their tongue plates, but the farriers will actually put a square shoulder in one side of their rivet plate, and on the other side we'll have a round, and then form the rivet head up here and up here, which means that only one piece turns. So the actual plate moves around the rivet, and it's locked tight here because this is a square shank. It's an interesting thought to the problem. I've never tried it myself, but it's supposed to reduce that issue of, you know, when your tongs bind up a little bit, and then you've got to give them a bump. It's supposed to get rid of that problem. Anyway, same, riveting, biggest thing, make sure you've got enough material, and if you want it to cinch all the way through, make sure it's a nice hot shaft.